Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by author, trauma survivor, and bodybuilder Jules. Jules suffered childhood abuse, and that turned into alcohol abuse. But today, she has turned her life around. She's written a book, and she just competed in the NPC figure division, where she won an award. So we're going to be talking to her about her life and her book and about that great award. Jules, thank you so much for joining me today.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you.
Why don't you start off by giving everybody a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, as my book, I hope that displays beautifully. I was raised in the Midwest. I was raised back in the 70s where we didn't have as many resources as we do today. I was also raised in an alcoholic family. So I acquired and, of course, adapted and acquired those sorts of skills, life skills. I got caught up in drinking pretty heavily. I dropped out of school. In fact, I dropped out in 9th grade. And so I really was plunged into the world with little to no living skills at all. And so as that progressed, for about 19 years, actually, that progressed. And then I was grateful when I turned 35. I guess I was, I didn't even realize that I was where the turning point of my life, but I found the rooms of recovery. And that was 14 years ago. And everything has changed.
Well, congratulations on your recovery. And speaking of your recovery, you say in your bio that this is not just any old girl get sober story. So tell us how your story is different.
You know, to get sober is probably the most courageous thing somebody can do. We say that it's simple, but it is not easy. And so I have seen people struggle, as we all do, people who seem to get sober and bounce back and forth and just can't get on their feet. And I am grateful for whatever reason that I have been able to keep these 14 years of continuous sobriety. And by doing so, I've applied some of the things I learned while I got sober to my life as I live and move forward. And so it's not just, I should be just grateful to have a 9-to-5 basic job, and that's a miracle that I survived the disease and the throes of alcoholism. But what I've been able to do is I've been able to, through recovery, just clear out, the wreckage of my past and kind of really get down to the core of who I am. And by doing that, I have now been able to live a life that is totally authentic to who I am and who I was supposed to be. For instance, this bodybuilding show, I started working out when I was 40. I wanted to get the cellulite off my legs. That was my only goal. And just probably 3 weeks ago, I walked across a national level stage and I placed in the top 3. So I have many miraculous stories like that. And it all is because what I learned while I was getting sober.
Well, speaking of your past, tell us who is Jules now versus who was Jules back then.
The first thing that comes to mind is black and white. There seem to be two opposite people. Back when I was a little person and pretty much before recovery, like I had said, is I acquired these life skills that were pretty terrible. And and I was very small, even physically. I felt I was very intimidated. I was fearful of a lot of things. I didn't think I sized up to anything. And I pretty much, as the disease continued, I found myself in places that I never would have dreamt being. And I continued to circle that drain. And ultimately, that's how the disease works. It takes you down until it either institutionalizes you or kills you. Now, this other side, and again, there was a lot of work that went in between these two phases of my life. Like I said, it's not easy. But what I have found now, and one of my big tools I use is meditation. And for me, meditation is a way that I can just pretty much turn the outside off and go inward. And by doing that, I am able to really see, like, what's bothering me today, or why am I really reacting this way? It has really nothing to do with the scenario. I'm being triggered somehow, right? So taking that and then, building upon that, I have now been able to go into places I never thought I would be. I used to, for instance, be very intimidated with people who had a lot of letters after their names, right? That meant that they were educated, that they had money, that they were stable, that their parents were normal. And when I finally, again, I progressed, I did do education. I went on and got my GED, and I got my I went on to college, to the university level. And when I came out and got into corporate, I realized, as I sat in the room with other agents, that they had a whole bunch of letters after their name, and they were no different than I was. But so these were people I was always intimidated of, but now I'm realizing they were just like me. And so what I now have the gift of doing is being in places ultimately that I was fearful to be in before. But I also now get to teach other people what it's like to really be authentic and to go into places that you never thought you belonged.
Well, you talk about living multiple lives. So, in your short time on this earth, how many lives do you feel that you have lived?
I think of life as an experience, right? Which involves my community, my surroundings, my lifestyle. Before I got sober, what I would do is I was a chameleon, and I would chameleonize to whatever my surroundings were. I think that's pretty much an instinctual thing to do, for survival. And so I've been, I've been in office settings. I've been in the hospital settings. I have been, around other athletes. I was actually a girlfriend of a motorcycle gang. A guy, was his girlfriend within a motorcycle group. I would chameleonize to who I needed to be. So, and now, again, on this side, it's like I have two sides to this fence, right? And so now on this side, for instance, I totally understand what it is to be a partner of somebody who's transitioning. Back before I got sober, my girlfriend, which was a big deal for me to come out, then transitioned like 6 months into the relationship. So I have that experience. I have that life experience. So it seems like everything that built up to today is because I've had the experience of being in those shoes.
Tell us about some of the people that have influenced you throughout your journey and help you become the person that you are today.
It's the people you least expect. I have idols that I think I admire, people that I don't know that I admire. Like, I have always been very moved by the story of Oprah Winfrey and where she came from and how she has successfully gotten to where she's at today. again, I didn't have many role models growing up. And so I remember watching movies like Sophia Loren, seeing her and how poised she was and how powerful and, how sexually, charged she was. I was drawn to that, and I would mimic who she was and take on some of those qualities. But on the heart level, in the rooms of recovery, I meet people from every walk of life. And, sometimes it's, one of the meetings I go to, sometimes it is the person in the elevator, it's people impact me when we speak the language of the heart. And it's amazing how fulfilling that really can be, things that I would have overlooked before.
You've been through a lot and you've chosen to remain anonymous. Why is that? And what is the inspiration for you even telling your story and remaining anonymous?
I think growing up in the world we grow up in, you just think everybody else is growing up in that world too. So for the longest time, I didn't think my story was any different than anybody else's. But then as I started to share this with people, they're like, I remember I have a friend in college who was like, girl, you have got to write a book. And I was like, this is no big deal. The seed was planted back then. And so, and also in the rooms of recovery, we also have that anonymity because we need that safe place to be able to go in and just be 100%. Me personally, I'm very transparent. And I'm very comfortable with interactions and questions and inquiries. But now I have somebody else to consider besides myself. And so now I'm in a marriage of 7 years and I have a husband. And ultimately we, family members and a whole other entity to consider. So because our lifestyles didn't align, when I was younger, I don't want to influence anything. My story is my story, has nothing to do with the people I'm involved with today. So I guess it's protecting the people who are in my life today, to answer the question.
Well, speaking of lifestyles, you mentioned in your bio that you live a different lifestyle. So tell us what that is and how is it different? And why do you feel that lifestyle might not be ethical to some people?
First off, getting sober was a beautiful gift to me because I was really able to shred a lot of the dogma, a lot of the impressions that were put upon me. As a woman, you should fill in the blank. I should walk a certain way. I should wear certain clothing. All of these rules, we all have them, both men and women and trans as well. It's like we have all of these expectations from other people. So when I got sober and I stripped down all this stuff and just really got to the core of who I am, I was really able to discover a lot of things that I found that wouldn't be accepting in different circles and so I was really able to recognize them and ultimately identify with it and then have the courage to actually acquire it opposed to keeping, suppressing it. For instance, I have a very open-minded marriage. I believe that my heart is larger than to love just one person. I mean, I've loved my mom, I've loved my dad, I've loved people in my past. My heart is ultimately able to love many people at one time. And of course, there's boundaries and intimacy levels, but to be able to have that freedom to love how I am meant to love is very authentic for me. I believe my body was made for function, to carry around this amazing soul that I have, but it's also for pleasure, right? So if you think our bodies are covered with skin. Now, skin, of course, is protection, but there's a lot of sensitivity in my skin, just like most people's, right? So I'm not shameful about enjoying the gifts that have been given to me by Source. And with the right partner or somebody who else is also very authentic, I'm able to express what I want to experience or not experience, or better yet, just say, I'm super jealous and this scares the crap out of me. To have a partner who will walk along with you on that is an amazing gift because you get to explore things of how you were made.
Tell us about competing in the NPC figure division. Tell us what that is and tell us about the award that you won and everything that you had to do to get to this point.
Like I said, I got sober when I was 35. At the age of 40, I look like the average 40-year-old woman. In fact, I weighed like 120 pounds. I was status quo. But there are parts of my body that I had always struggled with, always. And I believe that I learned some of the body dysmorphia from my mom. I think these are behaviors that are handed down. And so I had a terrible relationship with my thighs. I hated it. I was skinny, but I still had cellulite on my thighs. And I was so tired of being tired of this. And so I started the journey of, going to the gym and getting a trainer who taught me how to transform my physique, how to change parts of my body that I didn't like anymore. And so this progressed, and it got to the point where I'd gone through the first trainer, and then at the second trainer who came into my journey was she was a competitor. And I just remember like looking at her body saying, it's flawless. I want what this woman has. And so I have pictures. I think I am green in the face. I had to go and take the before and after pictures, and she did it in the posing room. There were mirrors on all sides. I was like on stage in the spotlight. It was totally the most uncomfortable thing. But I wanted it bad. That's how bad I wanted. I was willing to go through that. And so I signed on with her. I did the meal plan. I worked out with her 5 days a week. I didn't veer from that meal plan for well over a year. I wanted it that bad. And so when I started to see the changes in my body, I became even more hooked. And so I think it was around 43, 44 is when I did my first competition. And it was one of those competitions where there were 3 people and I took third. But I was so proud that, oh my God, I'd never owned a bathing suit 5 years ago, and now I'm on this stage. And so, moving forward, it was last year that I did a show, and I was in the physique division is what I'm trying to say. And I don't have the muscle that's needed to be in that division. And so after the show, one of the judges contacted my coach and said, there's one more show. Let's put her in it, but let's put her in figure. And so it was like 12 days later, I had to learn the routine. I had to learn how to do this in heels. I went to this show and I knocked it out of the park. It was almost like Source was like, this is where I need you, girl. So I took a first, a second, and a third at that show, which then qualified me for nationals, which is way beyond any goal I've ever had. And so then this year, I then went to Pittsburgh and I competed amongst the best of Canada, North America, and Mexico. And in my division of now Masters Fitness, Women's Masters Fitness division, I came in the top 3 and I took home a 3rd place medal. And I'm ecstatic. These were some amazing athletes. I just wanted to look good in a bathing suit. That was the goal, like how many years ago? So this is beyond any scope that I had ever had when it came to changing my body, and to the point where I would actually get a medal for that. That's quite unbelievable, actually.
Well, not only did you win that award, but you just had a huge launch party yesterday. Tell us about your book and what readers can expect when they read it, and how it's relevant and can help others survive similar things that you have went through?
It has been a nonstop couple months. We had a phenomenal book launch yesterday, and we did it online as well. So you definitely can catch up with some of the details that way. But the book launch was, backing up. The reason why I even wrote the book was because I wanted to reach the girl in the back of the room who feels the way I once felt. Like that woman walking into the room feeling completely inferior. The girl in the back of the room who thinks she doesn't belong. I have been in those shoes more times than not. And so the book was written as if I'm speaking with you right now. Like, I am super scared at this moment, or, it's like almost like I'm having a conversation with her. And really the reasoning of the book, that was it. And now, in even the few weeks that it's been, in pre-sales and all this whole manifestation of other entities have taken place. So now I've got like female empowerment. I have what it's like to get sober. What is resilience, courage. What's it to be an athlete and to be against the best. There's as I wrote the book, and we put this whole story together, really what I wanted to emphasize is that no matter what the scenario is, your story is different than my story, and of course, other people's story. But what we have in common is we have that language of the heart. And that is, I know what it feels like to be scared. You know what it feels like to be desperate. You know what it feels like to feel jealous. Fill in the blank. Those are the areas that I really emphasize, because that's what's going to change people, is being able to connect at that level. And now I have had feedback from moms saying, now that my daughter is doing, A, B, and C, now I get it from, listening, reading your book. Like, I get it. I've had men who come to me and say, this is why my wife acts the way she does when we go to a lifestyle event. It's like, it's hitting so many more people than I really, really had even imagined.
Well, tell us the name of the book and how people can purchase it.
The name of the book is The Making of a Woman. We have acquired a marketing team, and so you can access this book pretty much from anywhere. But the best place to go is www.themakingofawoman.com. And on there, you will find all of my links to, to Amazon to get the book, through Barnes and Nobles, all of those sites. I have blogs on there as I've been writing the book. I've been, putting the blogs in there, like podcasts, like we're doing right now. I have a tab there and all of the links to the fabulous people I've been able to talk to about this. And that also at the bottom gives you links to all of my social media. So, like the launch party yesterday, I had a whole group of people join me from around the world that I'd never met before, just through, our social media. So there's many ways to get in touch with me. That's really what I want to do. I'm a big connector. I want to be able to connect with people.
Well, we know you got the current book, but tell us about any upcoming projects that people need to look out for from Jules.
Like I was saying, I had the scope of just like getting this book out to the girl in the back of the room. I think now really what I need to do is just like let the dust settle for a bit. There's a lot happening right here with this book. And so what I'm hoping it does is reaches out to all the different walks of life. And if that means, I'm a big source believer. So if that means that, in the transgender community, for instance, if source needs somebody like me and my experience and my voice, that an avenue will open up, right? I want to do some guest speaking, with different areas of recovery, for instance. So really, I am very wide open to whatever comes next, because it's going to be amazing.
Do you have any final thoughts before we close it out?
I do. I know that we all have our highs and lows, and I've had them. And I think the one thing if I would have known in the beginning is you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, doing exactly what you're doing. It's all part of the bigger picture. Keep going. You're on track.
Ladies and gentlemen, the making of a woman.com. Go pick up that book. It's definitely going to be a good read. I would also like to remind my listeners to follow, rate, review, share this to as many people as possible. The story that Jules has to tell is amazing, and it could help somebody save their life or help them turn their lives around. Also, Android listeners, go to the Google Play Store and download the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast app. Jules, thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate this. This has been great. Thank you.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.